So I've been thinking about the counteroffensive, and I spend a lot of my time looking at Russian state media, whether it is what's projected to the audience in Russia or projected to a foreign audience in RT and TASS and Pravda and other news. So today what we're going to do is we're going to look at what is being presented in RT about the counteroffensive, and what we're going to look at was something just a day ago, and then we're going to look at something a couple days before that that was meant for a Russian audience with translation. So here's how this is being played out for an international audience, an English-speaking audience in RT. So let's hear what they have to say.
The situation here along the northern stretch of the front line, that is the forests around Kremenная, closer to Svatovo, around Lysychansk, is markedly different from the rest of the front line, what is happening in Zaporozhye, in Kherson, where Ukrainian forces are on the attack. In contrast, here it is Russian troops who are pushing against Ukrainian lines in small probing attacks, squad-sized also, and this is for tens and tens of kilometers.
Tens and tens of kilometers, you say? Okay, well, let's look first at the deep state map. There's not really a lot of change up here where I think he's talking about. There is some change down here, so let's roll the clock forward from about June 20th, and you'll start to see around here and down here, you'll see some movement. So let's just see the movement on the map here, like here, and there is some movement, and it's not a whole lot, but there is some movement, but there's not, I mean, for tens and tens of kilometers, there's something. I also want to talk about the ISW. This was the ISW on July 4th, talking about Ukrainian forces appear to be focusing on creating asymmetrical attrition gradient that conserves Ukrainian manpower at the cost of a slower rate of territorial gains, while gradually wearing down Russian manpower and equipment. So Ukrainian forces, according to Danilov, Ukrainian forces are performing their main task of destroying Russian manpower, equipment, fuel depots, artillery, air defense, and a war of destruction is equal to a war of kilometers. So they're not trying to grab territory as much as destroy and degrade the enemy. So they're at about 144 square kilometers, or 160 square kilometers if I have my facts straight at this point in this. But so that's not a lot of ground, but are they degrading the enemy? And that's what they need to be doing. Let's get back to this guy and hear what he has to say, and we're going to see what they're talking about here.
In one incident shared with us by Russian troops here, closer to Belogorovka, just south of us, a Russian infiltration squad managed to track and record the movement of a Ukrainian armored personnel carrier carrying out rotation of troops on the front line. A BMP armored vehicle with a crew of 3.
So this is a Russian video following a Ukrainian tank.
Is seen driving up to waiting soldiers. They board amid Russian shelling, 7 troops in all, and the vehicle sets off. It drives over a concealed minefield laid by Russian sappers. The vehicle is torn apart, and the resulting...
Okay, and so the vehicle is going to have not a good time here because it's going to get blown up by a Russian mine. It's not the kind of thing that I can show on YouTube, and nor do I care to show it, but that's what they're showing for Western consumption or English-speaking consumption for those that are interested in a pro-Russian kind of view of what's going on. Let me continue.
These Russian attacks are continuing. We also saw footage captured by a Ukrainian soldier whose defensive position had been stormed by Russian troops.
And this is
he recorded his surrender on camera.
Okay, so notice this is Ukrainian army body cam footage. So we're seeing these guys surrendering. So again, this is the narrative that they're putting forward. I find it really interesting. You're not seeing a lot of Russian body cam footage or Russian footage of things, but that's okay. Let's just see what happens.
Guys, we surrender. It's over. We surrender. Get your hands away. Get your hands away. Keep him in your sights. Give me the magazines. Get his magazines. I'm keeping my gun aimed at him. Where are you from?
31-я бригада.
31st Brigade from Dneprodzerzhinsk.
Do you have documents?
Есть правый карман.
Yes, in my trousers.
Keep him in your sights.
No, no, my hands are here. Don't shoot, don't shoot.
Is it on? Yes, it's recording.
The Russian fighters of the 228th Regiment fought a protracted battle as Ukrainians attempted to retake their lost position.
Okay, so they're still showing the Ukrainian army body cam footage.
Both the Ukrainian soldiers were of the 31st Brigade, almost all of which went through NATO training camps.
Okay, notice what they're saying. Both of these surrendered soldiers, they went through this NATO training. All of these soldiers went through NATO training, but they're only highlighting 2 that have been captured. But they're making it seem like this is much bigger event than what it otherwise is. It's a shame, it's unfortunate, this happens, but this wasn't like grabbing an entire army or something, but this is what they're showing.
The action camera captured had plenty more footage.
And then there's this baffling bit where they show Ukrainian body cam footage about, I don't know, some house where they set up shop. I don't get why they're showing this. With ominous music. And they're walking around carrying a gun or sitting in a... Yeah, why would they show that? Is that the best that they have? I don't quite get it.
Ukrainian forces, perhaps desperate to avenge their failures on the battlefield or out of pettiness, have stepped up their attacks against civilian centers, that is, villages, towns, settlements across eastern Ukraine. We ourselves were witness to such an attack in Kremenная.
And they're going to show that. I can't show the rest of this video because it would go against YouTube standards, and I don't really need to. I'm scratching my head going, is that really what they want to show the West? That there wasn't really much there. But then we want to turn our attention and look at the top Russian propagandist claims that, and this was just a couple days ago as well. So what I just showed you was yesterday. This is 3 days before that. Top Russian propagandist claims that he could take Kyiv in 3 days. Oh yeah, you want to hear this. This is for a Russian audience, and so it's a little bit different, a little bit more vitriolic, and well, I'm going to read what he says along these as we go. And this is the Russian Media Monitor. I love the work the Russian Media Monitor does. Here we go. Hi Zen, listen. People are sending me these kinds of questions. Why are you engaging in propaganda? I'm scared because I trusted you as an authority. You are a steadfast source of truth like my president. What, wait, like your president was a source of truth? This is what's actually played on Russian media, on Russian state TV, in Russian. Now I see how all of you, the official media, are trying to besmirch Prigozhin, paint him as a villain. Well, they kind of are, calling his March of Justice a mutiny. And for what purpose? What really happened? It's scary. Turns out you're lying for your own benefit. Why aren't you, as a journalist, discussing the fact that the Wagnerites were attacked by the defense ministry? Is concealing losses caused by their clueless policies? What is even happening? We just lost the strongest army in the world. We just lost the strongest army in the world. Wait a minute, hold on. They're claiming that Wagner is the strongest army in the world? This is on Russian state TV. I'm not making it up. You can look at it yourself. And you are rejoicing. Why? A young lady from Crimea wrote this. I just want to say, stop this hysterical foolishness. Everything is totally different. We are telling the truth. Okay, first, when you are telling the truth, you don't have to proclaim, I'm telling the truth, honest I am. You just tell the truth and people can determine that. Tell me, Zen, what do you think? What really happened? What's true and what isn't in these beliefs of Prigozhin's hysterical cult of followers? Greetings. I also received a number of similar comments. I'm very therapeutically explaining to people that their emotional infantile reaction may perhaps have been caused by fear. Well, that is kind of therapeutic. He'll make a great therapist, I'm sure. There is unquestionably a number of people susceptible to manipulation, which had been actively utilized by the organizers of the mutiny to justify an attempted military coup. Again, we don't know what exactly it was, a coup for Putin, a coup for Shoigu, or what exactly this was. It probably wasn't a march for justice like Prigozhin says. This is to be expected and should be understood. Personal stance and the government's position should be explained to the people, which is what I have been doing. It's clear that no one wants to slander anybody. I mean, God forbid, but a fact is still a fact. Prigozhin organized an armed mutiny. And it was something like that. It was some level of, you shouldn't have done this, whether you call it a mutiny or what exactly. It certainly wasn't a civil war. I'm not sure whether it's insurrection or just what. Organizers of the mutiny tried to overturn the government. Now that I'm not sure about, whether it was trying to overthrow Putin or just his subordinates beneath him. And I don't know if I think Putin's making a mistake here. I think Putin said, you shouldn't have tried to overthrow my generals. That you're not going to get away with that. But trying to overthrow him, like he's painting itself like they're trying to overthrow him, I don't get that. Maybe it's because it was thwarted and now he thinks he looks tougher, but I think that's a bad mistake. It doesn't matter what the organizers say after their mutiny has failed. The movement of an armed convoy against the capital with the goal of an armed overthrow was being prepared more than 1 to 2 days in advance. It was a well-crafted special operation. Okay, so it actually was. It doesn't look like it was spur of the moment. It does look like it has been on for some time, but they sure love these special operations, which has also had an info-psychological component. This attempted armed coup is a thoroughly pre-planned special operation. The info component was part of the framework of this thoroughly pre-planned special operation. Someone wrote me just now, wasn't Vladimir himself part of Prigozhin's cult? Listen, on that very day I wrote Prigozhin, what are you doing? Civil war is the biggest tragedy that could happen. It wasn't a civil war. For me, what happened is a personal tragedy because I visited these guys, these commanders. I like them a lot. I bet he does. What happened is a personal tragedy for me. But I'm not going to lie. I'm going to tell you the truth. Well, that's good to know that he's going to tell the truth. These guys have a lot of fluff embedded, but if you listen, you get to learn things. So let's just keep bearing with it. You may like or dislike the defense ministry. That is your right. But once you take 25,000 troops and military equipment and make a move against your country's capital, okay, first, he didn't get to the country's capital, and 2, I don't know that he ever was going to get to the country's capital, and 3, didn't have 25,000 with him. Maybe he had that total or something, but at any rate, his point still stands. You shouldn't be doing this. This is it, period. It's all over. This is an armed mutiny. You either obey the supreme commander or you don't. I think he's meaning Putin. You can't say later that you're not against him. You took the fighters and the military equipment from the front and marched on the capital of your nation instead of taking Kyiv in 1 day. I'm not sure what the comparison is to taking Kyiv in 1 day as opposed to whatever. Like if they couldn't get this far within Russia, like taking Kyiv seems like it would be improbable. And that's that. For me, this is a terrible disappointment and a tragedy. For me personally, oi, yes. Of course, this is simply a tragedy. They say I poured blank on Prigozhin. No, I didn't. I told the truth and expressed my point of view. Just 1 week ago, he was idolized by the people. And you know, there's something true to that. If you roll the clock back just a few weeks, he was seen as probably their most successful general or equivalent. He was adored. He burned his accumulated media potential in 1 second. He turned against the people. This is just a tragedy. Well, okay, so he didn't turn against the people. He did turn on the military leadership, and, you know, authoritarians do what authoritarians do, and that's kind of what they do. They do these kinds of things. Why weren't Prigozhin's grievances addressed? By whom? I think they were. Well, his grievances were that he was going to be folded into the Russian Ministry of Defense and pretty much lose everything. So if they were addressed, they weren't addressed to his satisfaction. Okay, listen, Prigozhin knows the president very well. Just recently, Prigozhin was having meetings with various members of the government. Prigozhin could have discussed and resolved all of his issues on all levels of the government. Let's imagine this hypothetically. The mutineers believe that one minister is bad. Tomorrow they will decide that another is bad. A day after that they'll decide that you are bad. They will go and grab you by the head. What should be the reaction to that? Who gave this right to a group of non-government comrades to decide how our country should live and decide how our country should be governed? Listen, that would be the disintegration of a nation. Hey, they're actually talking something pretty profound, right? Like, you should never have been in a place where you had multiple private armies running things like warlords. Anders Puck Nielsen talked about that in a previous video. Like, that's a really scary scenario to be in. What we do is we give a monopoly of violence to the government to rein it in so that we're not at each other. So he's kind of onto something. There's a number of countries that are very unlikely to ever restore their statehood. Do we want that? Of course not. Prigozhin might have had a chance to redeem himself. Take Kyiv. Perhaps Kharkiv, or at least Warsaw or Vilnius. Now, what he just said was so inflammatory, and you might not have caught that. Take Kyiv, and you would have been a bigger hero. Take Kharkiv, you would have been a hero, both in Ukraine. Warsaw is in Poland, and Vilnius, I've been to Vilnius 3 times, is the capital of Lithuania. This is what they're saying on Russian state TV. 2 Russians. Like, there's a reason that the Russians see the world the way they see it. If you're imbibing this kind of thing, you'd see it differently than if you're imbibing Western media. Perhaps Kharkiv from the territory of Belarus. Then we'll see. So he's saying that Prigozhin could redeem himself by going from Belarus into Poland, its neighbor, or into Lithuania, its neighbor, and redeem itself by taking these capitals. That kicks off World War III. Yevgeny Yevenovich Potomy was on air with us. Yeah. Quote, you said that we could take Kyiv in 3 days, unquote. I'm still saying I could take Kyiv in 3 days. But first, everything should be destroyed with tactical nukes. Again, this is Russian state media speaking to Russians, talking about nuking Ukraine. Erase Kyiv from the face of the earth and erect our flag among the ruins. In that case, we should use all our forces and means, harshly and terribly. And now the weather. And they go to a weather report. Like, this is what we're talking about on Russian state media. It's absolutely amazing. Okay, pardon all these exchanges. People don't understand jack crap, but make judgments. Everything should be looked into. Either way, the people should be punished. Traitors can't be forgiven, like Prigozhin. Fund the special military operation. Okay, so that is what you get out of Russian state media. The first was pretty mild. It was just looking at Ukrainian body cam. They did show a armored personnel carrier get blown up, but it was pretty mild in what was targeted to the Western audience. When they're targeting or speaking to a Russian audience, it's like a flip gets switched and they say something like, they say things like, nuke them, or attack the sovereign capitals of your neighbors. That's what's going on. I didn't make it up. You can look at the videos. I'll pin them below. All right. That's what's going on with Russian media and the counteroffensive and Prigozhin and all that. Thank you for your time. Thank you for the likes and the shares, the subscribes, the coffees. Thank you for caring enough to listen to what I'm showing you here and inform yourself. And thank you most of all for being the kind of person that cares about Ukraine. I'll be back tomorrow. I hope you'll be back too.